So yes, I used to work here, I used to work in Eaton, I used to work at General Electric. I do still work. I do not work part-time, I do not work full-time, I work all the time, and I retire only in the evening, according to my wife. So my main business right now is called Business Accelerants, and I help other companies to accelerate their profits. I'm working with vision companies, I'm working with some of the tier ones that we've worked with always here. And so I put this together for a couple of reasons. And I want to start with this. This was fun.
That's so beautiful. Oh my God. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, look at that. It's incredible.
I'd be happy if my remote control could find me, or I could find my remote control on the couch someplace. I thought that was kind of clever what they had done there. Now back to a little bit more reality. We do have an autonomous truck that went 2,400 miles from California to Florida recently. Hands off, driver in the vehicle still, because that's what's required by law. And this company hardly existed a year ago. It came out of the nowhere to do things. A question you have to ask is, are you ready? And there are a number of different surveys that are going on right now that talk about whether or not people are ready to accept the idea of an autonomous vehicle. It's like 75% last year were not ready. It's gotten better. It's now only 63% by one study that I saw. There's a lot of people who are not ready for the idea of an autonomous vehicle doing things. They may not realize how pervasive it really is. There is a tremendous amount of hype going on in this area. People trying to get their startups funded, $17 million, $90 million, $118 million. And they will talk about all the wonderful things that they can do, all the machine learning that they have, the deep learning and everything else. And they're all talking about it. And I'm wondering who's doing the work if everybody's going to conferences and talking and going out to venture capitalists in order to see what's going on. We have 2 brand new magazines now. It's just started in November. SAE has their autonomous vehicle technology, and another one called Autonomous Vehicle Engineering. I'm sorry, that's the SAE. And this is another global one that has come out recently to look at this technology. So you know everybody's talking about it, everybody's doing things on it. The economy is absolutely wonderful. If this were 2008 and 9 during the Great Recession, we would not see this kind of hype going on. In reality, we have 49 different companies that are licensed to do testing with autonomous vehicles in the state of California. They have a particular process where you have to register and get a license to do the testing versus some of the other states. And they also keep track of all of the disengagements that happen. So last year I think the number was 19 disengagements where a driver had to take over control. That suggests to me it's not ready for entirely prime time yet for things. And just in the area of trucking, if I look at both electric and autonomous vehicles, you'll see there are still a large number of companies, some of which have literally come out of the woodwork in as recently as November of last year. Companies, a lot of them coming out of universities and people doing things. Some of the names are well known, some of them are not. And these were the ones that are new names that I still don't know who some of these are. I've seen what Einride's doing out of the Netherlands. I know Auro Robotics, I know Local Motors and Navia, but in Starsky Robotics, I don't know Yutong myself yet. These are not new ideas. There are there's somewhere between 600 and 1,000 autonomous mining vehicles in operation in Australia, New Zealand, China, and elsewhere. This is just a concept that was introduced a year ago by Komatsu to take advantage of the fact that mining trucks are not having drivers now. They are heavily non-driver, and so you don't need a cab anymore. What can you do to increase the load? I mean, the loads here are 32, 64 tons of rock that you're carrying in these vehicles.
Oh, do you know how long it's been autonomous for these mining
At
trucks?
least 4 years.
4 years.
In the last 3 years, it's picked up tremendously. I talked with Caterpillar's autonomous manager a couple months ago now to find out where they were at, because they were not one of the people that were in first. Well, Komatsu and Volvo were among the ones that were first. We had SAE meetings on this, showing this at least 3 years ago, if not 4 years ago. They were already beyond testing at that point in time.
But these rigs, those rigs aren't AI, are they?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes. They have to have artificial intelligence in them in order to navigate. They are not just remote vehicles following a guided path.
Okay, so they're not just using Google Earth or something.
Correct. There's a lot of work going on buses of various sizes, from the large coaches and the city buses, all the way down to the small shuttle buses. The big trucks are what you spend most of your time on, and even here we have Thor, which came out of nowhere recently to do an electric vehicle that's fuel cell based. You'll recognize some of those other manufacturers. We have a lot of other things going on in short haul, agriculture, and work trucks. Again, because the mining trucks, we've had agricultural vehicles doing autonomous operation for a number of years already for their applications. This is an on-the-road thing for Colorado's State Department, and it's mainly there just to tell you that there's work going on in front. But instead of having to waste the time, effort, and money for a driver, it just follows the people along automatically with that safety sign. An interesting platform from General Motors that you could put kind of anything onto. Indoor work. I just met, yes?
I have a question. When you say autonomous, are you meaning like, how to say, like close the road, or are these technologies that can handle, like, how to say, dense traffic, bi-directional, or
Yes.
Okay.
They can handle all of that.
And also rain and snow, so it's not just ideal lighting conditions, but it's,
Rain and snow, rain, yes. Snow, maybe. People are just beginning to do the testing in the northern hemispheres where there's snow. There was a test just done in the Netherlands and in Sweden for that. But this is definitely not going to be on the road. That's off-road. We have the 6th largest manufacturer of forklift trucks here in town, called NACO, or Hyster Yale, depending on what name you want to go by. There are something like 50 to 60% of the lift trucks now are not diesel powered, they are electric powered. And there are several hundred units of those as well. I'm sorry, several thousands of units that are already out there autonomous. This is a picture of what Amazon's doing, where they have it. Package delivery is where there's a lot of effort going in right now with all of the UPSs and FedEx looking at what can and can't be done. DHL looking at what can be done. Toyota's got a nice little e-commerce idea. One of the issues, though, is when you order a pizza at night from Domino's, you expect them to come to your door. You don't expect to have to walk out to the end of your driveway, especially if you're in the rural area, in order to get your pizza. But there's a solution for that coming up as well. I was impressed in October, the United States Post Office, through the Office of Inspector General, did a report on applying autonomy to the postal delivery vehicles. And they actually have a good payback for it, because they don't expect the driver to get out of the vehicle. They expect the driver to be doing other things with mail sorting and getting ready to deliver so that they can deliver more mail with the same driver. That's got a payback to it. I was just on the phone this morning with Oshkosh related to that. And of course, cars. Everybody's talking about cars and doing things with cars, and we're going to see driverless vehicles for cars next year for sure. And here's the answer to the door delivery. We have smaller yet driverless vehicles that will take it and be able to bring it up to your door. And they're working on how do we handle steps and everything else that might go on there. So all kinds of vehicles, bicycles.
How about adding, have you seen the concept of using a drone for that last couple hundred feet?
Yes. Yep. So bicycles in various forms. For my motorcycle friend over here, this is to help you with balance so that if slow speeds, you're not going to tip your bike and have a problem. So they've got some sort of gyroscopic help that they're giving you. And drones, obviously. This is all kinds of concepts with them going on as well. And personal. Instead of losing your luggage, instead of having to carry it and everything else, just have it walk along behind you. Somebody mentioned Rich Bishel. So I'm sorry, Rich, but they already have what you were trying to do 10 years ago. They have the equivalent of the sweeper in your home to go out on your grass and cut your grass for you. So when I look at all of these different applications, I'm thinking, well, what's going to win? What's not going to win? What's good? What's bad with these different things? And what I see is it's a matter of what portion of freight delivery are they focused on? Are they focused like Embark on going 2,400 miles cross country where the vehicle is autonomous while it's on the highway, but it requires somebody from Ryder to come and deliver the trailer to the tractor that's sitting at the right near the entrance to the highway, and then needs a Ryder vehicle to take it away at the exit? Or are they talking about for all the old people in their golf carts in a private community where they're going to be able to get into it and say, take me to the doctor, take me to the hairdresser? All of these are actually being worked on simultaneously, and we really can't be sure which ones are going to be the ones that actually people will be willing to pay for and won't have problems with them. And that's why I come to this with everything I do. It's what is the pain that you're trying to solve? I do this with a lot with startups and with other small businesses. I was talking with a fishing bait company this morning. And his customer is asking him to do something. And their pain is similar to Daimler. They have to reduce their suppliers. And they're asking him to be more of a supplier and do some other things and aggregate material that they could deliver into the big retail box stores. So what is it that's going to be the reason that somebody will buy a vehicle? They asked Billy Clay Ford, the chair of Ford Motor Company at the Detroit Auto Show. Well, okay, I have a grandson that was just born. In 2034, when he's 16, will he need a driver's license? And Ford had not heard that question before, and he went, whoa. He said, maybe not, but I hope so. Because there are still, he likes to drive. A lot of people like to drive. You ride a motorcycle because it's fun, right? It's not because it's cost efficient, really, right?
That's part of the equation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what are we going to get out of a future vehicle? Emissions, okay. Reduction in accidents, maybe. It's probably a reasonable expectation. Reduction in congestion, I don't know. I don't know if we use deep learning with an autonomous vehicle to mimic how people drive, it's not going to work because they don't know how to avoid congestion themselves. Lower fuel costs, maybe. Certainly I see the 24/7 operation as a possibility, but it's not clear why people are going to benefit from a driverless vehicle yet. Cost of fuel, and diesel fuel has been a big driver in this industry forever, and we all got complacent after things dropped to $2 a gallon. But it occurs to me that in the last 2 years, if I want to be salacious with my terminology, the cost of fuel has gone up more than 50% in the last 2 years. Okay, we were at $2 a gallon here 2 years ago. We're now up over $3.10 in the latest thing coming out. Where's it going to go? Some people think it's going to continue to stay low, but the data says it hasn't, in spite of the increased production in the United States and becoming a net exporter of oil. If I were talking to fleet managers or anybody who might be buying a driverless vehicle, I would ask, what's important to you and your business? Does a driverless vehicle fit in there? What's the pain? And we know that, especially here and in a fleet, these are the kinds of things they're always looking to do. And only if new safety technology, only if new chassis technology, only if new cab technology saves them money in some way, they're not going to pay for it. Your competitor just introduced a new stand-up cab, right? And you have a stand-up cab that you introduced. Be able to walk through. Well, what's that for? That's because you need drivers. And it's going to make it easier to attract drivers, and you won't have to do, the latest I saw, US Express, one of your biggest customers, or has been in the past, $50,000 bonus for a team in order to get them to come on so that they can haul freight. That's huge. That's not just a few $1,000s. Roadmaps are used everywhere to try to, I'm going to go on this side, sorry. And when you think about it, autonomous vehicles are not all that new. We were talking about cell phones a bit ago. If you go back to the 40s, you had all the precursors that you needed with gyroscopes, cameras, GPS, and other sensors that were going. And we had industrial robotics from about the 1980s on. And so the idea that we're going to apply robotics to a moving vehicle is really what's new. And you can call it a car, or you can call it one of those robots that was in those personal robot kinds of things. Not everybody in this room probably, but this is the official worldwide definition of autonomous vehicles. 6 levels. You'll hear them say 5 levels. I don't know why they keep ignoring level 0, but it is there. There are 5 levels of assisted driver, and then there's 1 level of unassisted driver, if you will. Who's responsible for steering and acceleration? Who's responsible for monitoring the environment? What do you do when there's a problem? And do you have to be able to take over control? Another way of looking at it is this way. And here are some examples that I would say fit into those different categories. So most of you are using cruise control. I have on my 2010 vehicle adaptive cruise control, automatically brakes, automatically accelerates. Okay, so I already have that. That's this, but I have to be doing things. My feet are off of the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal. My hands are on the steering wheel. My eyes are on the road. Self-parking, we just saw an example of that. That's been around now for at least 4 years in production that we've had auto parking. The Tesla Autopilot is in this category because the Tesla says you're still supposed to keep your eyes on the road, and their camera is supposed to be monitoring the driver to see that his eyes are on the road. Then we get to platooning, where we have the option of the second vehicle having the driver with the hands off. Feet off and hands off. And then level 4 is where we have a lot of people working, and level 5. Some OEMs that are still working in the lower levels here, and there's a contingent of OEMs that are saying, we can't deal in this middle ground where we have to rely on the driver. We have to go all the way to the full side of autonomous operation to avoid liability. Unfortunately, we talked about costs and benefits, and costs increase as you get more and more capable with your system. So if all you want is level 1 type of things, you need an ultrasonic sensors in the back of your car. We all have them now. You need 1 long-range radar, which I have, and you need a camera for surround, maybe, to be able to look. I don't even have that in my system. But you go quickly from 6 items to 17 items with more sensors, more cameras, to more going up to 29, to still around 29 to get that next level, and then another 3 or so to get to that full autonomy. Now, for those of you that deal with trying to find space in a vehicle to put all these things, or those of you that deal with trying to get wiring to these, or those that are trying to mount these things and keep them from vibrating and failing, there's a challenge to get all of that stuff.
I have a question. GPS is not on there, is that in the system at all? I didn't see it on there.
Yeah, that particular diagram does not show GPS. You are correct. And yes, everybody would have GPS. This was, a particular person's slide that I used. So here we are. Anybody here have an autonomous vehicle? Didn't think so. Okay. So none of us have an autonomous vehicle, and maybe some year out there in the future, 2030, we want to have an autonomous vehicle. Well, there are lots of different ways of getting there. That's why we have so many competitors doing so many different things on so many different levels. When I look at all the things that have to be resolved in order to create an autonomous vehicle, it is immense. We have wireless communications. I was talking with somebody just now about what's going to happen with insurance. Will somebody insure us for an autonomous vehicle? Usually insurers like to have a long history and experience of things before they will insure something. There's no history here, no experience, and the law is not clear as to who's responsible and who gets sued and who's going to end up paying. Another option somebody suggested on the insurance was, well, if in 2030 50% of the vehicles are autonomous, will all those of us that have a driver in the vehicle have to pay more in insurance because all the autonomous vehicles are safer? Could be, could be. We have actuators, vehicle-to-anything communications, including the pedestrian. What power plant are you going to use? I'll have some comments on that. When I put this together, I didn't know that President Trump was going to suggest that all of us in every municipality fund the $3 trillion or whatever number it is road infrastructure programs that we need. It has not gotten popular acclaim in the last week since he said, hey, the federal government can't do it all, you guys have to do it, and we need help from all the companies as well in order to make this happen. Except for the drones, Henry. All the other vehicles need a road to operate on. They need good lane markings and a whole bunch of things. So we've got some major hurdles for an autonomous vehicle just in our road infrastructure and what's going on there. Some companies want to vertically integrate, like a General Motors is doing. Others are trying to do horizontal integration for everything they're doing. How are we going to train, not the driver, but the people to repair these items? Artificial intelligence, what's happening there, how will it change? The product validation people. How do you validate a piece of software that doesn't have an algorithm? That all you did was you showed it a bunch of data and it said, well, here's how I can make sense out of that data, here's how I'm going to control the vehicle. What are you going to do to validate that and meet ISO 26262 requirements or NHTSA requirements? Or if you're doing accident investigation, how do you investigate an accident where there is no defined algorithm? It's whatever it does.
But that's not quite the problem, I think, that you might imagine. Because nobody knows how we do it either. That's the problem, all right? You can't duplicate human vision very well because we don't know how we see.
That is
so
true.
So you're a black box, I'm a black box, he's a black box. But you're quite right. The test is, how are you going to test it and make sure it works as well, say as we do?
So we're not subject to NHTSA. The vehicle is subject to NHTSA. And our brain is dumb or as smart as it may be, it's getting put into a box that now comes under NHTSA's control, not God's. So we have to be careful. Sight, being able, not just sight, being able to see your environment in some way. There are many different technologies and that multiple roadmaps that are taking you down that path. We've had the ultrasound, because we've had the ultrasonics in our cars for parking and backup cameras already. We've had CMOS imagers. Every vehicle under 10,000 pounds has to have a backup camera now. It's popular in a lot of recreational vehicles and work trucks right now. And then we've got some with the short-range radar and the long-range radar for adaptive cruise control operations. Then we have dead reckoning sensors for in the tunnels, and LiDAR and night vision for being able to see even further and faster. And again, there are people who will say, such as Tesla, all I need is this. I don't need LiDAR. And then there's kind of everybody except Elon Musk saying we have to have LiDAR. And people are trying to get LiDAR down. But when they say they want LiDAR, it's not that one that you see on top of the vehicle that's spinning with its mirrors and costs $80,000. If you go back to that other slide, we're talking about a LiDAR where you have to have 5 or 6 of them on your vehicle in different places around on the corners of the vehicle to be able to detect things and then stitch that image all together. So it's not really just one LiDAR, and that's the obvious solution to making all of this happen. So here's what you have. You have LiDAR, radar, various vision systems, ultrasonics, and I would put in the V2X because we now have a regulation that says a battery electric vehicle, which is so quiet that you can't hear it, must emit a sound for blind people. And because we have vehicle to pedestrian, we have a number of different systems that are being invented out there where my phone would warn that vehicle that I'm about to cross the street, and the vehicle would take action based on the communication that I sent to it. So this becomes part of that vehicle being able to sense that there's somebody out there. These are typical diagrams that you will see suggesting that one set of sensors is good in one range and one location versus another, and somehow all of that has to be fused back together again. Again, this isn't new. Remember I said there were some vision things in that previous diagram. This is the same company's thing. We can go back to visible and near-infrared technology going back to World War II is when radar was invented. So we've had a variety of things going on, and this is with imaging, stereo, solid-state LiDAR, hyperspectral. FLIR is just right here in town for us. Lots of different ways of being able to see. And radar continues to go through its own roadmap of development. Frequencies. When I started working on radar at Eaton in around 1990, it was all 24 gigahertz. Today, it's all 77 gigahertz range radar that we're using. And you can see here that we still have new product releases coming out. This is Q2 of last year, and we still have things on the concept, which means they're not going to make it into production until way out there. If this is a chip, systems on a chip that was developed and released in 2017, you won't see that in production till 2025. So it's going to take time for this to happen. The radar is improving. And we mentioned snow and rain are still issues for radar and LiDAR. But it's getting better as they're starting to do development of it. And so you don't need LiDAR necessarily to do some things. You can do it now with radar. Yes.
What are the provisions, do you think, for masking interference from other vehicles? Right now, when they're testing on the road, there's no other vehicles coming at them or around them. So you're going to wind up with thousands of these signals being beamed out and pulled back in. Is each car going to have its individual signature?
So yes, I would expect that's a very good way of putting it, because we do the same thing with this. We could all be talking to different people on this. That's the same signal, but it's been coded in such a way that each of us has a unique way of being able to be sensed at the other end. So yes, you're going to need quite a bit of that. One of the more interesting things, BASF, I think it is, just announced that they're working on new paints for the vehicles that will be more readily visible to all these sensors. So you might have to go get your car repainted if you want to do an aftermarket installation of a system. And cameras they're one of the cheaper things to do today. This is the lift handle on the bed of a Ford F-150. And that's the camera right there. They are small and hidden nowadays. If you go look at some of the past cars and you look to try to see where they're getting their 360-degree bird's eye view, you have to work to find some of those cameras where they've hidden them. And they're getting better in terms of what they can detect. And one of the things I like is you can change things by putting a lens on them. So that rear view camera here, you know, we're getting used to the idea of a fisheye lens with the human factors interface kind of thing for those of you working on HMI. And one of the problems is night vision. And here's hot off the press. Denso has a new sensor that they've done. And this isn't by, I thought it would be initially by, well, we're going to emit some high frequency light or something that you can't see, and I'm going to be able to sense that with a new sensor or something. This was just making the CMOS sensor better. Pure, good old-fashioned engineering, next generation, and that is a tremendous improvement in what they're showing can be done in a well-known supplier. So, LiDAR, I found this interesting. As I was preparing, this is a slide in 2016 from this company about its roadmap, and this is the slide in 2017 from the same company. And it's interesting to see how they had modified their roadmap. So they went from having a mechanical Mark 8 M8 to just, okay, mechanical M8, but they look a lot different, don't they? So they came out with a new base level LiDAR in that 1 year. Then at the next level, they went from solid state S3 to a couple variations of it now. And of course that's good, smaller is better, definitely for packaging. And then at the top end, no difference. But that tells me that the top end is further out now than it was. Whereas in this picture, Gen 3 might have been 2020. Well, because they're spending all their time revising Gen 1 and making further improvements to Gen 2, that tells me that Gen 3 is further out, because they didn't put a time scale on that. But that's how I read such a slide. A little more technical here. Here's a typical spider diagram type of approach of what's important for sensing. Here's the works in snow, fog, rain. Does it provide color? Does it detect speed, sensor size, work in the dark, and things like that? And this is an ultrasound sensor. Okay, ultrasound works pretty well in the rain and snow and fog. But the passive visual, not so well, right? It kind of does almost nothing in the rain and snow, just as we can't do it. But look, it can provide color. Look at the other sensors. None of them can provide color. Do you want to know if it's a red light or a green light? Do you want to know if the red lights are flashing on the school bus or the yellow lights are flashing on the school bus? I do. So you're never going to get away, I believe, from having cameras. And then radar has its own problems. You put all three of them together and you get something like this. And then LiDAR has its own challenges as well. And it doesn't really improve things. So when I see Denso working on improving night vision, when I see some things going on to make passive visual work, when I hear people saying, should an autonomous vehicle be able to drive in the rain, fog, and snow if I shouldn't be driving in the rain, fog, and snow? Okay, I could maybe, in terms of multiple road paths, I could live with an autonomous vehicle that should not be out in a snowstorm just as I shouldn't be out in a snowstorm. Unless maybe it's an emergency vehicle and I want them to be able to get to me in that particular case. So, everybody wants to know, when's this going to happen? Artificial intelligence or normal intelligence? Here's normal intelligence. If you're lucky, 25 years and you kick your kid out. Does that work? Right? And what does it take to do that? A whole lot of mistakes, a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of money and education. I got a 9-month-old grandchild. My son's already put $25,000 into an account, and it's supposed to give the child enough money to go to the University of Washington, where he and his wife graduated from. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking him, but I wanted to go to MIT where I went. And so we looked up how much an MIT costs. We're going to have to put more money in that account in order to get there.
Sir, I have one question. I have eyesight in my Subaru, and if it has direct sunlight, it kills it. It cannot go directly into the sun. Are they considering that also? Because I remember a few years back, I was in Nevada, driving back into the sun, and I had to pull off the road because I could not see.
So I, as a human, have that problem with my own eyes, that if I'm going directly into the sun, I can't see. The CMOS sensors have had that problem forever. They have not solved it yet, but could they? Maybe. Maybe there could be a solution. Should somebody be working on a solution to that CMOS sensor having that blooming in that light situation, or should they be working on LiDAR? And the answer is yes. You've got to have some companies working on each. That's why I'm not sure which path to autonomy is going to be the one that satisfies all the different needs in the different markets, from going 4 miles an hour to going 70 miles an hour. If you look at how long it takes technology to be adopted, it's a long time. Yes, you have the short, people hear the cell phone. Remember, cell phone, 1980, okay? So it did take off quite fast. But you look at dishwasher. Do you know anybody who does not have a dishwasher? I do. So here we are, 60, 70 years later, and we still have homes without dishwashers. Of course. Telephone, this was interesting. Look how long that took. I'm surprised they don't show it 100% though on this particular chart. Refrigerators were tremendous. Look at the time frame that they came on. And I don't know of any place without a refrigerator. Even a dorm room has a refrigerator now. I was working with Auto PC here at Daimler in 1999 with the idea that we'd have an operating system and a common way of displaying stuff. Finally, in 2013, CarPlay was announced. And only this year did Toyota say, we're going to put it in a car. So that's a long time to get to a common way of being able to display information in a vehicle. Cameras and radar, pretty good. Starting in 2011 to 2017, 6 years. Okay, they've gone from hardly anything in onboard cameras because of regulations now. Over almost 45 million were produced. It'll probably be higher next year. Sounds great. Except there are 90 million vehicles a year produced globally. So that still means after 7 years, only 50% of the vehicles have cameras. And if I look at, I don't know if I have the slide. So there are 250 million or more vehicles in operation. So there's still a lot of vehicles without cameras in them. This is interesting, hot off the press also from Boston Consulting Group, projecting that maybe cars have finally reached their peak. And so sometime in the next decade, we're going to start selling less cars because they're autonomous and they run 24/7. Because it's a shared economy and they're not spending their time parked out here in your parking lot for 10 hours a day. Instead, they're being used by somebody, in which case we don't need as many vehicles being produced, but you've got to find other ways of getting your income, and that's in the telematics and connectivity types of developments that are going on. If I look at trucks, Asia has come out of the woodwork, if you will. They were 32% of the market in 2004. Today, they're well over half of the market is in China. Daimler, fortunately, is well positioned. Of all the different truck manufacturers for 6-ton plus, Daimler, one of the biggest manufacturers in the world for trucks. You should feel good about that. PACCAR is here. Ford, much smaller, of course. Toyota. Let's see, you've got a relationship with Beckley Photon, last I remember. And Navistar now combined with VW, now combined with MAN and Scania. MAN and Scania must already be in the VW line here. But there are 1.7 million heavy-duty trucks a year. So if you do 100,000 trucks, if you did that many, it still is a very tiny percentage of the trucks being produced annually or the trucks that are being sold. This is a recent one. I could almost believe that in 5 years from now there'd be 188,000 units from 343 last year. Okay, so it's not a lot of autonomous vehicles last year. Most of those are going to be test vehicles. And if we take that and you look at the global demand for trucks, 100,000 autonomous trucks would be 3% a year of the annual sales, and just 0.04% of the vehicles in operation. Because as you know, the truck that you produce today is still going to be operating at least in 2028 or 2030, if not 2035. Trucks last a long time. So when's it going to happen? Here's SAE's Office of the Inspector General's analysis. They're suggesting that everybody's saying they're going to have something this year, but this is really out in the 2025, 2030 time frame for the cars.
When they say, level 5, are they saying like 5% of the market will be autonomous, or are they, like, what percentage are they in?
They're not. That's why I used this one back here. That's a reasonable estimate to suggest that in 2025 it'd be 200,000.
Right. Okay.
You want to ask when, not if. All right, that begs the question. Nobody's got a truly autonomous vehicle yet, do they?
Yes, they do. The mines are operating totally autonomous
Well, I
vehicles.
mean, talking about a highway vehicle.
Highway vehicle, no, they're close.
I'd say there's I saw a video a few weeks back. There's one company, I can't remember what it's called, but they're level 4 and approved on certain highways for certain stretches of the highway. The
Yep.
driver can like
Certain highways is one of the things that people will do to try to.
You're nowhere near human capabilities for this. I mean, anybody in this room can drive any highway vehicle with suitable training and licensing. We can get a CDL, drive a Freightliner, we can drive a Honda motorcycle. You're nowhere near their capability.
Right.
The universal driving capability.
Correct.
And you don't know how close you have to be to that to really operate.
But if I'm 85 years old and living in a senior community, and I want to get to the community
smart
center.
golf carts are one thing, okay? I'm talking about 80,000 pound Freightliner, doing 65 on the highway without a driver. Getting on, getting off, loading, unloading, it's a complicated stick.
Absolutely. When you threw in the load and unload, absolutely not.
Absolutely, that kind of screws it up, doesn't it?
It certainly does. That's why I started and said, how are you going to make money at this? What is the benefit that you're providing? So here's a couple of reasonably good statements. So Kia has said, well, we're going to do partially automated, and fully automated is out in the 2030 time frame. Quantities, not mentioned. Peugeot. You'll find more companies saying that we're going to electrify everything by 2025 than you'll find anybody saying we're going to have autonomous vehicles. And even when they say this, it may mean that it just has a motor, a belt-driven alternator, so that you can start to stop the vehicle at lights. That qualifies as electrified. Your company, along with Bosch, said, apart from highly autonomous level 3 vehicles, we'll bring fully autonomous level 5 foreseeable future. What does that mean? I'm not putting a date on it, right? And Daimler can see really far, can't it? They're not willing to commit to when they will do it, but they will commit to when they're doing electric vehicles. GM is the most prolific in statements about what it's going to do, and they're saying next year, without a steering wheel. They've got the concept vehicle there. We'll see. I mentioned electrified, and in that first one of those earlier slides I talked about what's going to power these vehicles. Is it going to be diesel? Is it going to be gasoline, natural gas, propane, ethanol, or electricity? A lot going on with the electricity to suggest that you might not want to invest your time and effort in trying to automate a diesel vehicle versus trying to automate an electric vehicle. We have the problem, of course, in Europe with the Dieselgate issues over there that people have had, and people are doing things. We have cities that are getting rid of things. So I think the industry has an ace up its sleeve, and that these vehicles are likely to be autonomous, connected, and I think very likely be electrified. CARB is working to banish gasoline vehicles, internal combustion vehicles by 2040. China, France, and UK are in the record also with trying to set 2040 as a time frame where no such vehicles will be allowed there. Not just manufactured, aren't allowed there. Your company, here is the latest strategic information that's publicly available through the investor relations, showing how almost everything, if not everything, in the Daimler world is going to be electrified in the next decade. Volvo, I found this interesting. If you were to talk to Volvo 2 years ago, they would have told you one thing about what's going to go on. Now, they're all about electric. It's going to start in the urban areas, not over the road, long haul. Volvo, Daimler, electric. International, electric school bus. All good applications. I worked on this project back in 2009 for the ports of Long Beach and LA. Now, 10 years later, we have prototypes actually running. This is one of your trucks in Europe running with electrified system. And then that's at the ports of LA with multiple brands running. So one of the more interesting projections, you can believe what you want from consultants, but the green is gasoline. And here we are, it's kind of saying that we're just about to peak on gasoline. They're suggesting diesel, is already going down thanks to the car issues in Europe, I would say. And then here are the electrified, all of these different variations. So this one is still suggesting that we haven't peaked in the manufacture of vehicles, yet the same company projected that we would be getting rid of vehicles in the same time frame that they show this chart, so they're a little inconsistent.
You don't mention hydrogen on there, but that's...
The fuel cell. Yeah, that was the fuel cell. Your own company made a big press release in around November or December that they had sent 50 vehicles all across the United States to look at our lines. Because I can remember when we did the lane departure warning system, bot stats don't exist in Europe. And so there are problems and trying to see things in different weather conditions. And we humans can interpret things a little better than others can. And so what are you going to do when the lane markings do different things? And what do we do when the automated lane marker didn't work too well? I mentioned the school bus. How are you going to differentiate? The idea of this school bus doesn't exist in other parts of the world. And it's unique. The rules are unique to it. In some cases, we have municipal rules related to them. I still get worried that we can't keep a train on the tracks. We had, just last week, we had another, this is the one up in Washington, here, but we had 2 trains crash into each other last week. So the answer is, well, let's put it underground, in a dedicated thing and make it go really fast. And that's, people are really paying money to think about doing that. So this, maybe this guy got fired, but an engineering-ish guy says, we're going to make mistakes. Okay, and they can't help that. We're going to kill somebody. I don't think you should have said that to the press. But no technology is perfect. We will not be able to avoid an accident. We have rules for you engineers who are programming the code for conflicting situations. It's up to you to make sure that it works right, not the driver, not somebody else. Good luck. So, how do I go through a weigh station if there's no driver? Part of the weigh station is also checking your paperwork. Okay, we'll have to do that electronically too, right? So there's something that's interesting. Who does the pre and post-trip inspection and who's responsible for that? How do I get pizza to my door? Well, I said we're going to have these door delivery devices. So I get into my automated car in my driveway, or somebody comes and picks me up if it's a shared ride or whatever. We all want to stop at Starbucks. How are we seated? I mean, these cars don't have a driver's seat anymore, right? And Starbucks is set up with a speaker microphone for the driver to order something. Where are the windows? These concept vehicles don't show the typical kind of situation. So how do I get my Starbucks? We talked about validating self-learning. These vehicles, you know, these little shuttles with 4 people in them or something, call them a golf cart if you want. You know, what are they doing and what is the human interface? It's no longer the dash with a canopy over it to handle the blooming problem that you mentioned and stuff. What's it going to be like? I hate to think what it's going to cost to repair. My wife added this one to me, because when we were in high school, she used to, you know, be running late to catch a bus. It was a city bus, and the bus driver would see her out of the mirror, and he'd be kind enough to, you know, slow down or stop and let her catch up and get on the bus, instead of having to wait 30 minutes for the next bus. Will an autonomous bus be smart enough to be kind to you? So when I talk to fleets, I would say, not every one of these people that are dealing with autonomous vehicles can possibly survive. Everybody is struggling to find a, let's see, what is it? Lowering your real cost of ownership, right? That's a term that you developed here at Daimler. What is the real cost of ownership that's going to make an autonomous vehicle a good selection? It always takes longer than people think. So regardless of what people are saying, how long it's going to be, it's going to take longer than we think. And it will happen. You know, I can remember when I was dealing with telematics and it was analog and 2G. You know, everybody was talking about, you know, oh, it's going to drop out, I can't use it, and everything else like that and stuff. But, you know, it came. I was on a phone call to somebody in Texas driving around rurally, and the call got dropped 3 times while we were talking. Okay, it was a pain in the butt. But that was just a voice call. That wasn't the truck broke down 3 times while we were trying to do it. So, should the driver be automated or should the car be automated? So let me end with this. You seeing this?